All right, I'm going to do a little screencast here showing how I would set up some styles for recital programs. I teach in a school of music, and one thing that we have a lot of here is concerts, recitals, and we recently had an assignment for my graduate research and bibliography class where they learned about how to use styles instead of direct formatting, and I said something about showing how to do this for a recital program and instead of just a long term paper or something, and the kinds of issues you would come into contact with in this kind of document as opposed to a long written document. So I'm going to show what I came up with here. So what I was going from is I first searched the web to see whether there were any templates out there already that would help with this, and I found one from, looks like the University of Houston, the Moore School of Music, and they post one on their public website that's probably similar to what a lot of people would have. They say you've got to use this format or else they're going to send it back to you and you have to redo it. So they've got a large title kind of thing that says what kind of recital it is. It says who is performing, and they're using some clever names here. It took me a moment to catch on to this because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I recognize the name Matthew Crawley, which is from Downton Abbey. And anyway, so then they've got here the assisting musician, the date, time, and location, and then the works that are going to be performed. Some of them multi-movement like this, and a couple of elements you can see here. They're using automatic numbering, which is good. And they've got right-aligned composer and right-aligned date here, although I'm not sure this is done exactly. Yeah, see, there's something weird about this. There's a space at the end of this line that I would want to remove. That's probably just a mistake. So anyway, what I've done, and then they have down here a kind of, I guess this would be the actual template where you plug in your own values for all of these things. And I kind of went by this and made a LibreOffice template. If you're using Microsoft Word, there are ways to do all of this stuff in that, but I'm gonna, if you're one of my students watching, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just use LibreOffice and trust you to apply this knowledge to Microsoft Word if you want to, or you can use LibreOffice. So I've stripped all of the formatting from the text because one of the problems that I have with this is they used direct formatting for this. So notice when I put the cursor in this paragraph right here, for example, over here, if you look right here, it still says default style. And that tells me that what they did was if I remove the formatting from this, let's see, I'm going to do Control-M to remove the formatting. That tells you that what they did was they selected some text, they stuck it in the center, they changed the font size to make it big, they made it bold, and so forth. This is direct formatting, and they also used a different font. Here's some kind of Arial, I don't know what they did. But anyway, all of that is direct formatting, and we want to avoid direct formatting because that's the wrong way to do things. We want to use styles so that we're telling the word processor what something is rather than simply describing what we want it to look like. So I stripped all of the direct formatting off of this, and we're left with just the words. And I'm going to show you the template that I created to use for these kinds of things. I call it Recital Program. And I've got here a bunch of dummy text here, but I think I'm going to just get rid of it and replace it with this. Let's do a Control-C to copy and then paste it in here, and now it looks just like on the other page. Now I'm going to press the F11 key to show my styles, and you can see I've got here several custom styles. I've got intermission, daytime, location, movement, piece title, and studio. You can probably start to intuit what these are going to be for. I don't have anything for the very top line because I used a built-in style for that. So let's look at all styles, I guess. This one I just used the title style. So the cursor is in the first line. I'm just going to double-click title, and that applies the title style. And then for the next line where it says who's performing, I used the subtitle style just as it was. I don't think I've altered these at all. Now here is where I could start using the custom styles. And so I'm going to choose from which styles to show the custom ones, because otherwise there are just too many styles. So this says Studio of Matthew Crawley, so I'm going to use my studio style, which is based upon this one. The way I created the studio style was I took the subtitle style and modified it. You do that by selecting one, right-clicking on it and choose Modify, and then it will open it up, and you can give it a name, and then you can tell it like what font size you want it to have, where to put it. So this is going to be centered. And you can tell it how much space you want to have above and below. So I told it I want 0.04 inches above, 0.08 below, and so forth. One of the other problems with this original program was that they used something that I really hate. So they made space between these various things by having blank paragraphs instead of using a proper style that just where you set the margin above and below. So in mine, there are not going to be any blank lines between the different paragraphs. So I create space between them by adjusting the style, not by pressing enter multiple times. So now I'm going to double click Assistance, and you can see this style is, I think it's exactly like the studio style, only I italicized the text. And you know, this is something I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I don't even remember what they did on this one. They actually did not italicize the text on it. So let's say you don't like the italicization. All you do is go into the style, choose Modify, and under Font, choose Regular, Apply, and there you go. And now these are the day, time, and locations. Going to select all of those and choose the day, time, location style. Wait a second, that looks messed up. There's a lot of space between these, and I don't want there to be a lot of space. So here's a little trick you can use to get over that. The problem here is that each line is a separate paragraph. What if we had them all part of the same paragraph, only they had line breaks? So if you hold down the Shift key before you press Enter, it will just put it on the next line rather than creating a new paragraph. So I'm going to press Delete here, and then hold down the Shift key and press Enter. And suddenly these three things are all in the daytime location style, but they don't have that ugly space between them now. All right, so the next line is a piece title. This is the Sonata in G minor by Claude Debussy. So I'm going to double click piece title, and you can see it added a little bit of space above. And now here, let's not do these others yet. There's a thing I'm going to show you about tabs here in a moment. These next three lines are movements. So I'm going to double click the movement thing. Oh, wait a second. How in the world did that happen? The dates suddenly got all the way over to the side. That is because there is a tab. I guess I might as well talk about tabs now. So we want the date of the composer's life over there on the right-hand side, and we also want the composer's name to be on the right-hand side. And the way you do this is not by pressing the space bar repeatedly like that. I mean, people do this all the time. People who don't know better routinely do this. It's not necessarily their faults. They've never been taught the right way to do it. So the right way to do it is not to press space repeatedly or to press multiple tabs until you get over there. What you do is you set a tab that will be at on the right-hand margin, and that will be right aligned. So, and I've already done this. So under the style, there's a tabs tab where I've added a 7-inch tab to be right aligned, and there's no fill character right now. I'll talk about fill characters in a minute. So since there's a tab at 7 and it's right aligned, if I press tab, it just goes over there. Isn't that wonderful? Now, if I start typing anything else, you notice it won't push it to the next line. Like if I had filled in that whole gap with spaces, if I started typing, I don't know, Frenchman Claude Debussy, it would just push Debussy to the next line, but since I have a tab and it's right aligned, it just adds the text right in there and it leaves it where it's supposed to be. So that's how you do that. You manage the right aligned things by putting your tab stop over there. All right, what's next? So intermission is next. I have a style for intermission as well. And I decided to play around a little bit with this one by putting lines above and below it, and also fooling around with the letter spacing. If you ever find yourself wanting to have extra space between letters, the way to do it is not to type a letter followed by a space and then a letter and a space and so forth. This would fool around with your accessibility because you would not be able to search for these words and a screen reader would not read it the correct way. The way you do it is you modify the style. So I'm going to get rid of those lines for one. I think they're kind of ugly. Where is that? Under borders. Right now the borders has top and bottom. So I'm going to set to no borders. And let's see, font effects, text flow. Where is it? Font. Is it under alignment? Indents and spacing. Here we go. In LibreOffice, the letter spacing is under the position tab. And the way I made more space between letters was to adjust the spacing value. It says expanded by, at this point it's 5.0, but let's say I think that's too much. I'll change it to 3.0. And when I look at it now, the letters are a little bit closer together. Okay, and notice that this style for intermission has enough margin above and below where it looks good. If I decide that's not enough, I can increase it. I don't just press enter to make more space. What I do is go to the indents and spacing, and I can change this value to 0.25 and this one to 0.25, apply it, and now there's a little bit more space. So here's another piece title. I'll double click that. I'll go over here to the composer's name, press tab, and boom, he's over there. This one, the tab is only going one tab character because I haven't yet applied a style to it. So I'm going to select all 4 of these and call it movement. So no, those are the movement style. Now when I press tab, it goes over to the right hand side where it's supposed to be. Here's another piece title. And there's no movement here, but I'm going to go ahead and call this movement anyway because it's on the movement line. Now the movement style has a slightly indented first line, and you set that by going over here under, in LibreOffice anyway, there's a setting for before text, and I have it set at 0.35 inches. And so that's why the movement line put a little bit of left-hand margin here when I applied the style. So now I'll press tab, and that goes over to the right-hand side. I need to put Pablo de Sarasate over there as well. And this Alicia Florek violin would be a assistance thing. All right, so now we have a pretty nice looking thing. It's very consistent. Now, the reason you might want to do this, let's say that I want to have the piece title be in a larger font than the rest of it. All I've got to do is go into the style. Let's change the piece titles to 14-point font. And now, look how nice that is. The movement titles stay the smaller font. The piece titles all change to the larger font. Now, here's another cool thing that I didn't talk about in my other instructional video for my class, and that's character styles. Character styles apply only to the characters that have been selected and applied it, not to the entire paragraph. And so, for example, I have made separate character styles for the composer's names. I select the composer and then choose composer name. It turns it to italics. I think that's the only modification I did here, but let's say for some reason I wanted the composer's names to be, I don't know, what could we do here? This is going to be very silly, but we could have outline and shadow and blinking. Oh yeah. What do y'all think of that? Now there's no reason why I can think of why you would want to have this in a program, but what I'm showing you is the fact that you can have certain attributes applied just to the characters and not to the whole paragraph, and that will distinguish them one from another. And okay, that's really, really ugly. I'm going to get rid of that. So anyway, you wouldn't have to do this necessarily, but if you wanted to distinguish the composer's name from everything else by some attribute, you would use a character style to do that. And then if your teacher says, you can't be italicizing composers' names, that's ugly, just make them back the way they were. And so you can modify the style now by just choosing the regular font, apply it, and there you go, it's back the way it was. But the program still knows that this is a composer's name, so you could still make use of that later if you wanted to and change it. Well, so you know what, I don't care what the teacher said, I'm at least going to make it bold. And so now all my composers will have bold names. All right, there's a couple more things that I want to, actually maybe just a couple things I want to change. I don't like how these numbers have such a large space between the number and the item that it's numbering. This is ordered list with Roman numerals followed by a tab character and then the text. What I want is to change this so that it's the Roman numeral followed by a period and a space. But then that would cause another issue, which is that I think the reason they did it this way is so that the first letter of each of these pieces of text would be aligned. But we can fix that by having the Roman numerals aligned on the right-hand side instead of the left. So what we do is select that and go into bullets and numbering and choose numbering alignment on the right and have the number followed by a space rather than a tab stop. Oh, looky there. Now that fixes it. Well, now it looks like it's too close to the side, so I'm going to go back in here again and choose align at maybe 55. There. Okay, so now looky there, this is the way Roman numerals ought to be aligned. And I do that by modifying the bullets and numbering. Let's do it for this one as well. Seems like it ought to fix it for both of those, but it doesn't. Oops. Format, bullets and numbering. This is aligned at 55, numbering aligned on the right, followed by a space. All right, there we go. I think that's pretty much how I like it. Now we have a document where everything has a style applied to it. And the final step, if you know you're going to have to do a lot of these kinds of things, the thing to do is save it as a template. And so this is something you may never have done before. Notice that when I opened this up, I was not just opening some other file I had already worked on. See up there at the top, it says untitled number 1. That's because this is a brand new document, even though it was populated with text. But the way we make one of those is by doing save as, and then I'll just put on the desktop here. We find the open document format text document template. So if I were just saving this as a document, it would be ODT, but I'm going to save this as an OTT file, and that means that it's going to save all those styles that I created, and it's going to open this up as if it were just a brand new document. On Microsoft Word, this will be a .docx file. Most of the time you would save in a docx, docx. If you save it as a docx, then you're saving it as a template, and each time you open that up, it'll just be a brand new document that hasn't been saved yet. Clever, huh? So we save this as a template recital.ott. Well, actually, it'll do the OTT itself. And now, if I close that out, and then I open up a new text document from template, it's not going to find it actually because there's a special hidden file that you have to put them in on LibreOffice. But if I go to my desktop, and I double click on that, notice that when it opens it up, it doesn't say recital.ott at the top. It says untitled number 1. But looky here, you've got all your styles. I'm going to press F11 and show the custom styles that I've made. Still got the character styles, and so then I can plug in whatever values I need for these things. All right, that's gone on much longer than I thought it would have to, but anyway, the new concepts here are character styles, tabs that have right alignment, different alignment for the numbered lists, and also the character after the number. Letter spacing, that's a new concept as well. All these things are controlled by the styles, and this is the way you make beautiful documents that are consistently formatted. Okay, that is it. Bye, y'all.